The index and match are two separate functions which can be used in combination to help us overcome the drawbacks of the VLOOKUP function. So over here we just described it. The match function returns the row number and the index function extracts the cell value from the corresponding column. So with the VLOOKUP function, we are actually doing both of these things, right? So we'll anyway see how this function can be used, these set of functions can be used, and how it can actually be a lot more better than the VLOOKUP in terms of the flexibility. So we'll do it one step at a time. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll use the match function to return the row number. So I'm just going to apply it over here. So I'll say, okay, let's do it outside. I'm going to use the match function. So what does the match function ask for? The lookup value. So what is it that you're trying to look up? I'm trying to look up the order ID. Where am I trying to look it up? So we don't have to mention the entire array. We only have to mention the specific column. Okay, so I'm looking for the order ID in the shipments data table. Column is order ID, right? So I use the square bracket to specify the column. So this is one major difference that we see with the VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP, we had to mention the entire array. Here we are only specifying the column. And then the match type. The match type is same as the Boolean values that we have, the exact match. So if we put 0, it will look for the exact match. So now if we do this, it returns the row number as 1. So 1 is actually the row number. So what does this mean? That it means that the order ID 1369 was found in the first row of our data sheet. So yeah, within our data table, 1369 is in the first row. It always excludes the header. So that is correct. So now let's make this a little more dynamic. So over here, instead of the order ID, let me change this to shipment reference. Shipment reference is an other unique ID that we have in our data table. So I'm going to change it to 1369. I think it is 789 if I'm not mistaken. Let's go and confirm this. Yes, 1369 789. So now our formula is not working because we have manually mentioned that check it in the order ID. So I'm going to change that. Instead of order ID, I'm going to say shipment reference. Okay, so it still manages to find out the row number. But then if I go and change the column, it's still requiring manual work here. So let's automate this. So rather than just typing it in, I'm going to use the indirect function. So with the indirect function, I will mention the data table name, which is shipments, and I will also provide the square bracket, and I'll use the ampersand symbol to combine it with the column name. So the column name here is the header that I've used here, shipment reference, and I'm going to combine it with okay, the closing square bracket. Perfect. All right, and I'm going to close the indirect function. So this will ensure that it will always pick up the correct column reference. So now if I execute this formula, perfect. So it still found out the shipment reference number 1369789 from the corresponding column, right? So now if I go and change this to order ID and I change this to 1369, it works perfectly. So I have a very dynamic formula over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this formula into a text so I exactly know how the formula works, right? So with this, I was able to return the row number as 1, correct? So I'm going to use this in combination with index. So index is used to extract the cell value from the column. So now let's use the index formula. So the index formula, there are a couple of options here. So we're going to use the simple option, that is array, the row number and the column number. So the array is the entire shipments array, correct? And then the row number. So we know that the row number for order ID 1369 was 1. So for now, I'm just going to type in 1 just to keep it simple for now. I'm just going to type in directly 1. And then the column number. Which column do we want to pick up? So just like how we had seen in the previous video, rather than mentioning the column number directly, I will use the indirect function along with column indirect, and then shipments, and combine it with, I can actually use the square bracket as well, and then combine it with this, the column name, and combine it with closing square bracket. Takes a little bit of practice just to get used to typing this in, but becomes very dynamic. So we do that, and that's it. So that's all it required. It required just the column number, and then I can close the formula, right? So there we go, and we are done. So now when I execute it, I get company AA here for the corresponding order ID. So now I can just drag the formula and it should work perfectly here. Brilliant. So now I can go and change in the values. Works perfectly. So now what we need to do is we need to make the formula dynamic. So instead of entering the number 1 manually here, I'm going to copy this formula. So I'm going to copy the match formula that we worked on, and I'm going to update it in the place where we typed in 1. So I'm just going to paste that over there, and I'll execute it. Now we have a much more dynamic formula. So what we'll do is let's go and change the order ID to 1371. Works perfectly. So instead of order ID, let me say shipment reference and 1369789. I hope I got the shipment reference right. Correct. It still manages to pick it up. So we have a very dynamic formula. So this is how the index and match formulas can be used in combination.